we're going to France. Now, it's very rare that we visit France, but if you didn't notice under the radar, we visited the Laco site quite some months back when we looked at some Neanderthal evidence. We've also been to France when we've looked at Joan of Arc, and we've looked at cave art there as well. So, you know, but today we're looking at the landscape around Carnac in the Breton world. And the image in front of you is a wonderful image inside the Gravinis tomb, passage tomb. Now, I didn't just want to look at these standing stones at Carnac because I thought, well, Rosa stones, yeah, as much as they're fascinating, I think you'd all be stoned out at the end. Just like my archaeology of Roman forts last night. People were sort of Romaned out. So what we're going to do is look at the rows at Carnac, the aligned stones at Carnac. We're going to look at this site, a site which has beautifully incised designs on granite. And we look at another weird little site, which is actually behind me. It's, if you all look at the small image, it's a stone circle, which is partly underwater. And there's another stone circle there as well. So that's what we're going to look at. So we're going to look at 3 sites. And there's also a site that we're going to give you as homework. So that's basically what we're looking at today. So what we need to do is just get looking at these images. And again, we will look at this site in detail, but this passageway here at this wonderful passage tomb.
You're breaking up. Can't hear you. You're not moving.
What's wrong?
Hello.
I'm here.
I'm back.
It's fine.
Okay, I hear you now.
Right, Pat. When you get moments of bad reception, just let me flow.
You're gone again. You're frozen.
Right.
Frozen.
Pat, I'm here.
You're not. I can't see your mouth moving.
Pat, but can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Right. The best thing to do is as this is recorded, right? Just let me flow, and if you get more than a minute with no sound, let me know. Okay. Got it?
Okay.
Excellent.
Got it.
Just let it flow. Right. So this site itself, in the granite there, the wonderful granite surface, you can see the wonderful sort of semi-spirals. And one good thing about this landscape was I've got Mike, who does my Rhondda class, and he actually lives within this area. He's got a home over there. And he's visited this site and the stones at Carnac and all the other sites there many, many times. And he said that if you look at the carvings inside this passage grave at Gavrinis, they almost look like as if they're water ripples. And I actually would sort of agree with him there. Now, these stones themselves are carved on the side, the reverse, and the front. And also the stones on the decking as well have actually got carvings on them. So we do look at this site behind, and it looks over, as a little bit of an overview still, it looks over from these stones in the water that have now been submerged over these thousands of years. The period that we're talking about is 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years ago. That's that tomb that we're going to look at there, Gavrinis. And Gavrinis, like this one behind, is now on an island in the Gulf of Morbian. Now, the Gulf of Morbian used to be just a few inland lakes at one stage, and now it's completely accessible via the sea. Water level rising and the loss of these archaeological sites. But low water, particularly with this one on this little island, you can see it, and Gavrinis is not underwater at all, but it's still on an island. And we've got all these little things that we're just going to scroll through now. So looking at this stone circle site, the sea life, love it. A stone circle underwater. Now, Stone circle underwater. Where is my comparison? What type of site can I say that we've got stone circles that we've been to? Pat and Bill have been with me to Orkney, and when you go to Orkney, you go to the Ness of Brodgar, and you're reminded that in the water around the Ness of Brodgar, there are stone circle sites and settlements and all different types of things under the water because water level's risen. And it's rather interesting. You've got these standing stones poking out the water. We don't often get that. But within this sort of fairly calm, watery landscape, you can see them today. So I want a little look at this one because it's really unusual. And as I said as well, this week I've had people saying, are you going to visit that site? Are you going to visit this site? And I said, well, I can't do them all. I really, really can't do them all. So sorry if I don't visit the 100 or so sites in the landscape. We only visit 4, and tantalizing are a couple of others. So the place that we're looking at is, let's get my little drawer in, is here. And there are over 3,000 menhir standing stones, most of them associated with the long avenues of stones at Carnac. And the area that we're talking about isn't massive, actually. It's only a few square miles. It's sort of this area. That's all we're talking about. And actually, some of the sites are underwater as well. So that's fine. So I've been thinking about this site for a while, and I thought, how can I do justice to it? And the only way to do justice to it is to compare it with lots of other localities. And it's great to have so many standing stones. When you look at the standing stones, there's more standing stones at Carnac, very careful on this, than there are standing stones across the whole of Great Britain. Now, I'm not really sure I'm completely correct there, but I wouldn't be too far off. So say if you put a few hundred on Orkney and maybe 1,000 across England and a few hundred across Wales and Scotland and Ireland. Yeah, so this has got more standing stones than the whole of the British Isles. So Morbian, it survived the Second World War. It survived lots of things, but it's a landscape that is a prehistoric landscape, and it's a landscape that has seen a lot of changes. So the stones that we see today represent not a small proportion, but a significant proportion of stones that were standing in the prehistoric world. But we need to sort of equate this to whatever you're seeing is not really what our ancestors were seeing. So if you see standing stones that are 2 meters high above the surface, they may have only been 1 meter high above the surface because of natural erosion and depletion of the soil, maybe. That stone in front of you there is at a site known as Loch Maracas. And that site itself is a site that we look at the end, Loch Maracas. And that's a site that we do only briefly, and that's your homework. That stone itself, that one in front of you, which is collapsed, was one long shaft, one long steelite. And that itself stood up to, drum roll, 14 meters high, taller than my house. Now, I said we'd do a bit of comparison. If any of you have been to Stonehenge, Avebury, at Avebury, it mentions 2 stone circles. Within the big stone circle, it mentions something known as the Cove, which is in the north part inside the big circle. And it also mentions something called the Sanctuary. Now, it mentions of a huge obelisk, big sort of steelite, big sort of erect stone at that sanctuary site at one time. And they've excavated there, and there's a big hole. And because of the sort of thermal pressures and so on the rock and everything underneath the ground and so on, they've indicated the height and so on. That would have been something similar to this, but not as big as this. This is 14 meters high and 14 meters. And the stonage, the weight, the tonnage, hundreds of tons in weight. So they were able to do this, and they were very able to carve into granite using the tools of the day. Now, what day are we talking about? This is where we get confused. So if you write down these like 2,100 years BC, going back to 4,250 years BC, which is 6,250 years ago, that's the Neolithic period, right? Neolithic, which means new lithic period, which is what lots of archaeologists say, the agricultural revolution. And they were building lots of chambers and starting stone circles and all the rest of it. Now, however, what we do see is that lots of these monuments are actually being built before the Neolithic period. And that's unusual because we don't get this type of monuments in Britain for the Neolithic period. Let's start again. We don't get these types of monuments in the Mesolithic period in Britain, or are our dating techniques wrong? But what we do know is that this was a very charged, very highly occupied landscape over 6,000 years ago, which is 1,000 years before we're really starting to get interested in Stonehenge and so on and so on. So it is in France, but what we do see is true technology being utilized, and something very special is going on within the landscape. Now, none of this, for me, in my mind, is to do with religion. It's not really to do with ritual. And what this landscape is about you and me. It's about what humans do. It's about the progress of humanity. And that's a good way of putting it. Another one of the basically chambers within the landscape of Karnak. This is referred to as a dolmen. Now, it's referred to as a dolmen in France. Well, you get dolmens in our country as well. Menhirs, upright standing stones in our country. You get menhirs over there and here as well. So it's the similar words or same words, because the Breton language is very similar to the Cornish language, and the Cornish language is very similar to the language of Cymraeg. And what we do see is that even though we see thousands of these stones standing today and being used for various different purposes, one thing that we do know is that lots of the stones that did exist have been broken up and used in roads and so on and so on. And actually, one interesting thing is we've me and Richard are writing a book on the archaeology and history of Barry and Carrickston. We're looking at really weird things in it. And there's been something that used to be marked on our pavements in Barry saying Stuart's Granolithic. Never knew what this meant until Peter on Tuesday, he said, what they used to do in Cornwall, they used to get loads of granite. They used to pound it to bits, and that used to make road surfaces. So these stones lying within the Karnak landscape would have been perfect for breaking up and making road surfaces, because we used to do the same. But obviously that's probably from granite lying around in Cornwall rather than ancient monuments, but you never know. You never know. So that stone, that wonderful stone that we're going to look at the end, that stone which when it was together was 14 meters in length and probably more. And there they are, the stones at Karnak. So what we do, we go through the stones at Karnak, yeah, and then we go to look at all these images that we got to go through. Then we go to this site, and then we go. So we got basically 4 localities that we're going to look at today. So there you go, the stones at Karnak. Now, where do we go with this? Well, where I go with this, I'm just going to get my notes up on the screen. Let's do it. And Anne just sent me a message saying the internet is down, so it's not a good one all round for people in Bridgend and people in the Rhondda Valley. So let's have a look at my notes. So if we get massive internet problems, guys, remember this is recorded. And if this doesn't record, then you've got the Landscape Major recording to view. So the Karnak stones. The Karnak stones are the largest, underline largest collection of megalithic standing stones in the world. And there are over 3,000 of them that we know of. These standing stones were cut from local rock, the igneous volcanic rock. of granite. The stones were erected at some stage that we don't really know. And when it says these were erected 3,300 years BC or 4,000 years BC, actually, we don't really know. They weren't all erected at the same time. So if somebody sits down and says, oh, I can give you a date when all those stones were erected. It was on the 14th of August when I was a lad in the year 4,000 years BC. We knew Jesus was coming. They're talking crap, and so am I, because these stones are being erected across this monumental landscape for probably over in excess of 1,000, if not 2,000 years. So they've got plenty of time to erect these stones at Karnak and to build the wonderful sites at Karnak. Now, we got 3,000 stones standing there today. I guesstimate that that's only half of what once stood in the prehistoric period. Nobody ever sat down and said, oh, what we're going to do, we're going to build rows of stones and they're going to be associated with the solstice. And even if they did, somebody who was actually adding to those rows of stones 100 years later would have thought something else. And then they would have thought something else. It's a bit like, I'm going to pick on Bill now. It's a bit like Bill. He worked as an engineer. Now, was he always interested in history, or has he just turned to history in his post-retirement years? In some people's cases, that is true. People's mindsets change. They move from being interested in one thing and they go on to another thing. This is like human communities. They might see that putting up statues is important in the Victorian period. Now we don't really put up statues. And we might put up town halls and use them for town halls, but a few years later, we might use them for a co-op. This is exactly the same as the prehistoric past. What people felt about their landscape is something that we can only dream of, and we can only get a glimpse. So if we're talking about these stones, there's a little note in front of me saying 4,500 years BC. That's before the Neolithic period. That's the Mesolithic period. Hunter-gatherer people. It's said by the wonderful, eminent Neil Oliver. He says that if these stones at Karnak were erected 6,500 years ago, they were erected by hunter-gatherer people. And he says, why not? And I actually say, why not also? Because if you look at the Yamon culture of Japan, the Yamon culture of Japan, even though they had villages, monuments, roads, trade, everything, they didn't really need agriculture. They didn't really have it. They had everything they needed around them. So why did they need to get their hands dirty and plow fields? Why do they need to do it? Yeah. And you don't need to. If it's so easier to catch fish and it's so easier to get wild grains and all the rest of it and pulses and so on, roots and so on, blah, blah, blah. You're a hunter-gatherer, but you've got settlements and so on and so on. So all these terms like hunter-gatherer and sedentary, which is like set on the landscape, or prehistory, Neolithic, they're meaningless actually, because nothing in archaeology is ever set in one box. I didn't demonstrate this last night when we looked at Roman forts in Britain. I didn't demonstrate the fact there was likely that no more than 5% of the British population at any one time could be said to have been Roman from the continent. And probably by the end, it was probably only about 1%. So everything that I was saying last night was just about 5% at most of the population. So the story that we're saying about the rest of the population is something very different. Again, history is very fragmentary, very, very fragmentary. These standing stones, lots of them have been removed, and the ones that are there still today, great. Alignments, menhirs, whatever you want to call them. In the landscape as well, there's dolmens, burial chambers, tumuli. And up until recent years, there are reports that these dolmens, these burial chambers, have been used for sheep shelters, various nefarious activities which you can find on dodgy websites, chicken sheds, or even ovens. In other words, these burial mounds, these dolmens, these chambers, not the standing stones, have been used for lots of other things in recent times. So seeing as that they've been in the landscape for nearly 6,000 years, some of them or even longer, what could they have been used for in that time? Lots of things. The only thing that they probably couldn't have been used for is a parking bay for cars, but you know, they've been used for everything else. So the stones themselves, you know, people probably said, hang on a minute, there's 1,000 stones over there, we need to build a road. They're not going to miss 100 stones, so they break them up and they build a road. Who's to know? Who's to say? Who's to say? So what I'd like to do now is I would like to show you some more images. And I'm just going to double check something. Oh, Anne's back with us. That's good. Again, Karnak, these beautiful stones. Now, excuse if I actually use some vulgar terms, but I think you've got to on this lecture, so it's in the right context. So these stones, what do you notice about them straight away? They're big, fat, some are slender, some are thin, some are twitchy, some are rough, some are smooth, all types of stones, all shapes and sizes. That's as much as I want to go with as an interpretation at this moment. That's probably, I won't go much further than that. Because I like the idea that these are being built by communities that want to create something. Today, Bill writes books, I write books. We don't actually do it because we want to be remembered. We want to do it because we got something to say. Bill and I probably know full well that our books are still going to be around in 1,000 years' time. But we didn't do it for that reason. And these stones themselves have been constructed not for the reason of longevity, have been constructed because they built them. Yep. So if you go to West Kennet, Longbarrow and Avebury, which I know a majority of you have been with me to those sites, leading from the Barrow, West Kennet, is an avenue, and that leads to Avebury, and that's 1.6 miles long. Now, there's another one called the Hamston Avenue, but there's only 2 stones left associated with it. Now, when you go to Stonehenge, and when you go to Avebury, Stonehenge as well, when you go to Avebury, it tells you that these standing stones at the West Kennet Avenue, the long, slender ones represent a penis, and the big fat ones represent a really pregnant woman. And you write penis there, fat woman there, penis there, fat woman there, penis there, fat woman there. Hundreds of them, and there would have been many more in the past. And you start to think, what a load of absolute nonsense. It really, really is. And the reason why it's an absolute load of nonsense is because it's really insulting. And why is it insulting? Do you really think these people spent really important times of their lives when they could have actually been ploughing the land and bringing in the crops, looking after their children, hunter-gathering, whatever they were doing, just to build stones that represented a penis or a pregnant woman? It's just absolute nonsense. But these misconceptions of the past continue. I don't think any of you were with me when we had a trip to Stonehenge. We've had 3 trips to Stonehenge, but my trip to Stonehenge. And I was told beforehand, under no circumstance are you to tell your guys, Archaeology Cymru, anything that we haven't already published. And I thought, bollocks. I can say what I like. Again, excuse the language. I did say that I was going to use this language. And that's what I said. I said, I'm not having this. So, and then they said, right, we're going to have somebody shadowing you. And I thought, oh, great, brilliant. That's brilliant. That is. So I was presenting the stuff, and there was this security guard looking at me, and I knew full well that any minute, if I said something out of line, they would ask me to leave. And I was being told that there were things I was saying that they didn't want me to say, because there were members of the public watching. And I was really upset by this, because how can they tell me what they know happened in the prehistoric period? They can't. They just can't. And the same thing happened when we went to Bath a year and a half ago, or whatever it was. We went to the Roman baths, and there was a security guy and a manager. And I said to everybody, I said, right, I will tell you about the baths. And the security guy and manager come over and said, no, you won't. And I said, what do you mean? They're paying me to tell them. They said, no, you won't. They've got to listen to this. And I thought, right. So one of the gang said, right, I pay Carl to tell me what's here, right? I'm not listening to this bloody device. And the manager said, if I open my mouth, they're going to escort us out of there. Anyway, long story short, I told them exactly what I wanted to tell them, and that was it. But what I'm trying to get at is that the past itself is only a postcard of what's there. So in other words, Bill goes to Crete and he writes a postcard saying, having a wonderful time. I saw a couple of monuments, a good looking woman wandering across a beach, went to a nudist beach. I had a drink in the local taverna. I stayed for 2 weeks. With some of our archaeological sites, that's all we've got. That's the whole story. When in fact, Bill went over there, he visited 100 archaeological sites, he slept with 50 women, and he went to 25 beaches, and he had a load of wonderful meals. But in the postcard, it only tells us a tiny fraction of the holiday. And this is the past. The past is just a postcard, and we can only glean what we can glean from it. But let's be sensible, folks. This is not to do with religion. Carnac and its standing stones. Carnac is a very in-demand seaside resort in the south of Morbian, with its beautiful fine sand beaches, its many aquatic activities, and lively town centre. You can spend a very pleasant day there among family and friends. Carnac is also famous throughout the world for its standing stones. But as we know, not just its standing stones. Look at that bloody bugger on the screen there. That's about 3 meters tall, that is. And the one next to it is about 3.5 meters tall. Look at them, they're wonderful. Known as menhirs. I said there's 3,000 of them in alignments across now moorlands, because there wouldn't be moorlands back then, of over 1 kilometer in length. 1,000 stones here, a few hundred stones there, whatever. And we then look at a stone known as the Manio. There he goes, the Manio. The Maniostone. That stone itself is 6.5 meters in height. It's a huge stone. I saw an image earlier on. His little child sat at the base of this. It was dwarfed by the stone. Again, what do all these things mean? And when you think about it, these people didn't have time for religion. And if they had just had a tiny little bit of time to erect these stones, tap on their back, because that's all the time that they had. Carnac, there is that area there. Fanay, south of Lorraine and Rhine, and that's basically the area we're talking about, a really small area. So we'll just put a little dot thing there. That's the area we're talking about. Even the lake itself. Wonderful landscape of archaeology. A wonderful, wonderful, intense landscape. And there they are. Alignment. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 alignments of stones. Hundreds and hundreds of stones in rows. Now, Bill will have been lucky enough, and the driver, on our trip that we took to Orkney last. And we visited a site near John O'Groats called the Row of Stains. Basically, the row of stones. The Scots are a bit basic with their terminologies. And these stones were actually little stones, little rows of stones in the ground. Now, what could they represent? Could they represent the same as here? No, because they were constructed at different times. But we know that they were put by people who cared. We know that they were put by people who wanted to remember the moment. You know what? They were people put there by people like you and me. People that had lives and loved and had children and were in humanity. So this is, we go down to what we're going to do. We'll enlarge this a little bit. You can basically make out that what we've got is a little map of these stones. They're in little segments divided by modern roads. So we go from Monet Alignment through to KARL-JAMES Alignment to, we don't do Maniostone, but that's where the big stone is. KARL-JAMES Alignment and the La Petite Monet Alignment as well. So have a quick look at those. So keep them on the chart in front of us. So let's look at my notes again. So the Monet Alignment itself, there are 11 conversion rows of menhirs stretching over 1,160 meters in length, which is over a kilometer, by 100 meters wide. Now, this wonderful site itself is the one that we see lots of photographs involved with, over 1,000 stones at that alignment. And some of the stones can be up to 4 meters in height, leading all the way to the cromlech at the eastern end. They all seem to end at a locality. So you've got one length of stones ending at a locality, standing stone chamber or something. Another load of stones ending somewhere. Now, this is the Monet Alignment. And again, that idea is set within a wonderful, rich prehistory. So the current Mario Alignment, which is, we'll just show you that one, which is that one in the middle, Mario Alignment. There's a lot more stones there. That itself consists of 1,029 stones in 10 columns. A stone circle at the eastern end again, so rather interesting. And also, by the time it gets to this stone circle, the stones seem to get shorter. And this is over a length of 1,300 meters. 1,029 stones that we know of. Looking at the plan again, the KARL-JAMES alignments, which is there, which is number 8. The KARL-JAMES alignments, it says a smaller group of 555 stones further to the east of the other 2 sites. It is composed of 13 lines with a total length of 800 meters. And these stones range in height from Dutty, 80 centimeters, to 4 meters in height. At the extreme west, where the stones are tallest, there is a stone circle, which is 39 stones. Now, again, and the one at the end, which is the La Petite Monet Alignment there, those stones are all hidden in the wood and probably haven't really been properly counted yet. A bit like the votes for the Republicans in the American elections, they haven't been actually counted yet. So that was one for you, Pat, just to wind you up. So with looking at these stones, again, they are important. And these ones like hidden. Now, over time, they would have been forgotten. But you know what? Let's try and put a bit of meaning in here. Let's try and put a bit of an inferred meaning. Now, Mike, who Anne's met, he he's got a home in this part of France. And he said to me a few years ago, he used to have this girlfriend. And this girlfriend used to say, right, there's something in the bushes over there. And Mike being Mike, we get very excited. And the next thing, he's looking at a burial chamber. And then they go somewhere else. They're looking at a row of these wonderful, these menhirs, these great monoliths, these orthostats, all different names for the upright stones. And he said he learned a lot from looking at these stones. And then I basically asked him, what did you know about them beforehand? He said, nothing. And I said, that's the way to think. And what I mean by that is that when you see monuments like this, it's always good to go there blank. Now, Bill and I used to do this, and Pat used to come along as well. I used to look at the map and I used to say, Bill, we're going there. And we would always get there. And I don't know if Bill ever realized that I'd never done any research on the sites that we were visiting. We would always go into a field and I said, well, this is this is that, this is what this is. And I hadn't actually read up on the sites at all. And what made for a good activity was not knowing, because you learn more. I don't know if this is the same as you guys, but when I write something down, I forget it. When I don't write it down, it stays in my head. Do you know what? I have given 400 seminars since the 23rd of March, 400. And they've either been written down or they've been put online. But, you know, most of them I wouldn't be able to give a lecture unless I looked at my notes again or something like that. But if I looked at the images, I could probably just put a lecture together. Like, I've looked at all these, I've researched all these. And the reason why I've done research on these, I just thought, well, I just wanted an extra bit. And then I lost my enthusiasm for these stones. And then I got back to my enthusiasm. And the enthusiasm is this. Let's just get to one more image. This is the enthusiasm. That's my enthusiasm. And what that says to me is achievement. Bugger the religion. That says achievement. Rows and rows of stone. Also, that says something else to me. It's not regular, is it? It was never planned like that. The person, let's just go on a flow here. The person who originally decided, right, we're going to have a row over here. That person was part of a family. And that person was part of a wonderful community. And they decided to put those stones in a row. And maybe a few generations went by and the people said, well, I don't know why there's a row of stones. We'll stick another row of stones along here. And what they did, they left a few gaps. They didn't actually put stones all the way along this length. They may have put stones here and they've been taken away for quarrying, but not all of these gaps would have been filled of stones. Each of these stones, now this is fact, folks. Each of these stones meant something to the people putting them up. Fact. If you say they were put up by aliens, then you're a fool. It's really insulting. That's a fact. Now, this thing about empty spaces. When I've been to Avebury, you know, the next time I take a group to Avebury, I'm going to say, jump out of the minibus and we're going to run around this place and we're going to have fun. Unlike me standing alongside stones, boring you to death about what's in a book, just enjoy these stone circles, because just enjoy these stones. Just enjoy these prehistoric monuments. When you go to Avebury, it talks about these stones, and it was Alexander Keeler's excavations. He talk about these stones, 90 odd stones that were around the outer circle, within the ditch.
Breaking up again.
Right, I'll just keep talking. You catch it up online.
It's been about a minute.
You're back again. Alexander Keeler, when with the stones inside, she said that all of the, where you got the standing stones and the spaces in between, there must have been a standing stone there. And then you get another stone and another stone. Because there's a space, there must have been a standing stone there. As she said, there were over 90 odd stones within the central henge monument. And when people have excavated those holes, they found three things: a broken off stone, evidence of little bits of stone chippings in the bottom of the hole, or a hole and there was nothing in it, or a place where they thought there was a hole and there wasn't actually a hole there, right? And actually, that doesn't sound regular. It was never meant to be. Just because there's a space doesn't mean to say there was always a stone there. When Bill and I went to Cornwall recently, I think Bill was as disappointed as I was with one thing: not the trip, not me, not him, nothing else, not the people, not the places, not the experience. What we were disappointed with was that whenever we would go to stone circle sites, I would say, Bill, there's 19 stones here. And then I would say, actually, they reconstructed some of it, or they've added 1 or 2 stones. That's the problem. Just because there's...
I understand you.
Right. Pat, you're just going to have to go with the flow. Right? You're just going to have to go with... You're going to have to go with the flow because this is being recorded, right? I'll just see what messages we got coming up on the screen. Internet is failing. Right, okay. We've got 2 messages through saying that the internet's out in Bridgend because it's still working here. This is being recorded.
Now I can hear you fine.
This is being recorded, folks, so it's fine. So back to what I was saying is that if there's a space in between the stones, don't put a new stone in there. Just leave the site as it is. Don't muck around with the experience. And then when you don't muck around with the experience, we might start to be able to understand this great landscape of archaeology from the prehistoric period. I just want to say one thing that's sort of relevant to you guys in Bridgend is that they shouldn't have moved that stone from the allotment at the wreck ground in Bridgend. They should have just left it there and built around it, because the stone that's been moved has got no meaning or significance in the landscape anymore. You shouldn't move these things. You should just leave them as they are. Don't even excavate them. Just fantasize over what's there, and that's all you can do. These lines themselves. Now look at that. That's not really straight, is it? And then look at that there. That's how it sort of goes off. And look at that one there. That's not exactly aligned. That one there goes in something like that. And that sort of goes up there and comes down there and goes down there. So these are not all linear lines. And I don't think they were ever meant to be. I think people said, look, we'll put that in there like that, and that's what we'll do it. It's not building a house. It's just alignments, which means something to the people who constructed these alignments. And that has to be respected. Not having to give, there's people said to Mike on Monday, I said, well, Tuesday, I said, well, Mike, what do you think about these things? He says, well, people who go to these rows of stones at Karnak, who spend 25 years of their lives studying these stones, when you can actually look at these stones and learn everything about them in a week. And I think he's right. I think he's right, because these are not meant to be as complicated as the signs and information bears out. They're not astronomical alignments. I don't think they are. You can think they are if you want, but I don't believe that. I don't think they're anything to do with religion either. When you've got religion, you need control, and you need people leading your society. And I think this was built by people working together but not within a society dominated by a king or anybody like that. You need resources to have kings, but you don't need to have resources for a small family to erect one of these stones. That's the difference. Moving on. Look at that. Don't they look great? They look absolutely fabulous. Amazing. But they're all shapes and different shapes and sizes. Again, more of them there. Absolutely wonderful. Now, I was reading a story. I was reading an entry about a pope, and there was this pope in the medieval period who believed that there was an army following him at this locality, and he looked behind. There was this big pagan army in rows following him, and he turned around and he cast a spell on them, and they all turned to stone. Now, I had to read that story twice. It was a pope, and it's a pope casting a spell for these individuals to be turned to stone. What does that say about the Christian church? And the other thing as well is, another legend associated with these stones is that Merlin, good old Merlin, because we've got the Arthurian myths and legends associated with Brittany, the Bretons, Brittany, as much as we've got over here. And apparently Merlin saw the ranks. You're going to love this one. Merlin saw the ranks of a Roman legion following him, probably the 9th Legion, disappeared. 5,500 men following him, which is the numbers in a Roman legion. So Merlin cast a spell, and all the Roman legionaries turned to stone. And do you know how I feel? I think that there was probably another nearly 3,000 stones which have been lost, because if they all represent Roman soldiers and a few camp followers and stuff, that's the answer. It's in the history. I love these little historical murmurings to try and explain what these stones are. The main thing is they were actually built by people many, many years ago, and they meant something to them. It's a bit like Bill sending me a Christmas card. Thanks for that, Bill. Or it's a bit like Pat giving me a wonderful key ring with a Roman soldier on it. It means something. Like these stones mean something. It meant something to them in the past. I dropped dead, the key ring's found, it means nothing. It meant something to me. Bill sent me a card, it meant something to me, but it means nothing to anybody else. It's the same thing with these stones. They meant something to the people who put them up. And these stones are big enough for probably a group of 15 people, which would be the size of a family in an extended little area, to actually erect. And that would make a lot of sense. There you go. Wandering through the stones of Karnak. And I reckon Dell's been here, you know. I don't know why I reckon, but I think Dell's been here. And I'm just going to look at my little notes, because I do believe somebody said something else as well. Ah, yes. Henry, we'll come on to that in a short while. Now, they've built a house in the middle of that. Look at that. You can imagine. Come on, boys, let's get stoned as you've drunken alcohol. Sorry, it's a bit of a joke there. But over time, people have built houses in these, and they probably use the stones to build the houses. And in fact, the house is as much as part of the landscape as the stones are. And these stones belong to the state of France. They actually belong. Nobody can touch them now. They belong to France. So what we're going to do after the break, we're going to go to this site, and then we're going to go to Gavrinis. And the wonderful Henri is right. This looks very similar to New Grange, which I will mention. So what I'd like to do now, I'm waning like a wane in a sea. And what we're going to do, we're going to take some questions, and we're going to go on a break. So let's see if there is any questionos. Henri, you can speak.
I think I think the internet is making it hard work today.
Yeah, it is.
No, the New Grange one was just the similarity between the tomb and the carvings, but I don't know the age aspect, whether it's consistent or not.
Well, actually, the answer is no, it's not consistent, because I say consistency is within about a year. And New Grange may have been built hundreds of years apart from this site. But to an archaeologist, it's in the Neolithic, it's around the same time.
Right,
So
okay.
It's consistent to an archaeologist, but not to me as an archaeologist looking at it in my context. So, yeah. Patricia.
Yes?
She fell asleep.
Nope, I'm here.
Anything you'd like to say, Patricia?
No, I have been there. I did stand there and look, but I didn't explore. It was a long, long time ago.
You know what? You're not the only one to say that. Mike said the same, and a lady in my Lantwick Major class. It was quite weird today. We got a lady in a Lantwick Major class who lost her husband last year, and nobody knew his name. And she said today, she said, I went with my husband. She gave his name when we were both 24, and we stood along and looked at the lines, and I just thought, that is just so magic. That was really nice.
Mm.
So her husband's come back in her life, even though she lost him last year. So she's getting through it, which is great. Anne?
Yeah, I was going to say the similarity with New Grange, with that first passage
Yes.
chamber. And I just think they're fascinating, you know, the lines of stones. I mean, the only thing I can think of is the Nazca lines, you know, like how they made very large formations so that they can be seen from above. You know, that's the only thing.
Do you know what? I don't need to repeat that, because that's what I was going to say. That's fine. That's exactly what I was going to say. Well done.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Del?
Yeah, I mean, I've been there twice.
Oh.
And they're absolutely awesome.
Mm.
But as you mentioned, they're not straight. And that's the first time I went there and looked at them and thought, all right, we're going to have these straight avenues of stones now. And when I sort of put my arm out, they weren't straight.
No.
And, you know, that was one of the things that I thought, oh, these were built by humans, by people, maybe not, you know, for the stars or whatever, you know, you know, dates and things, but maybe there's another reason why they built them. Maybe it's something from the local shaman who decided, right, okay, every household now has got to get a stone, bring it up, and we'll line it up, and that's your household. So, yeah, the whole area was remarkable. And the second time we went, it was in the evening, and there was definitely an atmosphere. Don't know what it was, but could have been because I'd had a Breton day in a place called Santa Barbie's. No, it wasn't pink and fluffy. It was a church. But, you know, I'd rung this bell, and we went back down then to Carnac and stood there looking at the stones, and I thought, oh, there's something about this place, something special. But I didn't think it was to do with any sort of benign stuff or anything. I just thought it's a connection rather than something, you know, religious.
Yeah, just a feeling, really. Just a sensation.
Yeah.
Mm.
It was lovely. It was lovely.
Actually, both what Anne said before, not just then, but what Del said, I had a big smile on my face, because it's almost as if that's where you needed to be going with these classes, and you've got there, which is great. I don't need to say any more about that. I'm really pleased about that. That's great. That's exactly that is, and you, Anne, that's it. That's exactly nailed it. I don't need to say any more. Bill, go on, Bill. You've been unmuted. Go.
There we are. Okay. Whenever I look at these ancient stone formations, I think the one question pops into your mind time and again, I mean, all the same, is why? Now, when I looked at Karnak and all those rows, what popped into my mind was World War I and the aftermath. And all those burial sites, all those rows of white stones in a line where all these gallant soldiers lay. Now, why can't Karnak simply be a cemetery? Once a family member or a family group die, the neighbors come together, they bury them, and they plonk a stone where they to commemorate them. Now, why can't that happen? Other families over many hundreds of years next to it, the next family when they die, etc., and it goes on and on and on. Why can't that happen? Are we complicating and bringing religion or astronomical reasons when they don't exist? Why can't it be as simple as a cemetery over many centuries?
And my answer is going to be quite simple. Is actually I'm going to simplify it even more, Bill. Right? As much as I agree with you, I'm going to simplify it even more. That we don't really have the evidence of people being buried at that locality, but as a family memorial, as a family tree, as a family place, as a moment to go to, as embodying who these people were, that's the stone in a nutshell. So it's everything that you've said, but I've just simplified it.
So has any excavation been carried out at the stones themselves?
I haven't.
And would there be any remains after 4,000 years?
Well, put it this way: if you shallowly buried the remains, there wouldn't be any remains there anyway. And if it was a form of excarnation and remains were just the point is with the chambers that we've got, that's where the skulls and the long bones and everything would have gone to, right? But we don't right, Bill, we don't necessarily need to find bones, as I've just said, as you said, as Del said, as we're saying, to actually immortalize somebody. Those, you know full well, Bill, that some of those gravestones have got nobody in them, right? Because they haven't found the body. You know,
I go along with the memorial stone idea. Yeah, I'll go along with that.
No,
Why not?
I'm going along with what you just said, but I've just simplified it.
It's just another theory, which is very plausible.
No, the one thing, Bill, is this, right? Now, I need to say this. We need to go through a tick box of facts. Del said it quite eloquently. These stones have been put up by people. We know that they've been put up by people. We know that small groups of people have put these individual stones up. Those are facts. And those people represent an idea, and they represent a group. So everything that you've said is correct. So that's fact. You can't deny anything that you've... It's not, Bill, it's not just a theory, it's fact. They were erected by people, and those stones meant something. That's not imagination, that's fact.
That's right. And why is the big question. Why?
But do we always need a why?
Yes, we do, because we will always ask why. It's natural to ask why when you see something. You try to understand it. That'll always be the case.
But that's post-processional archaeology. That's after it. The point is, we're asking why, right? We've got those questions. The same 1,000 years after these stones were put up would have been 4,000 years ago. They asked why. 3,000 years ago, they asked why. But the people who put these stones up may have not have asked themselves why. They just did it. It's the same thing, right? Let's just be really brutal. Somebody jumps over a cliff, right? They just do it. There's no reason why they kill themselves. There are cases of that. There's no reason why people do it. That's an extreme thing. We plant a tree. We plant a tree in a woodland, and the children say to their dad, "Why have you done it?" "I just planted a tree." "Why should there be a why?" Somebody gives Bill flowers. Why does there need to be a why somebody gives Bill flowers?
Mm.
And that's the one thing that I probably don't agree with, the word why. We ask why, and you're correct. But them asking the question why is not, for me, the answer. That's all.
But you're inferring then that these people didn't reason. And they did. So I think the question will always be there.
Actually, Bill, that's to reason, right? Okay, to reason why. That's from the poetry of Vilsed Sassoon, isn't it? To reason why. I think it's Vilsed Sassoon.
Philosophy, isn't it?
Yeah, to reason why, but sometimes humanity, you don't need to say for example, I saved a lad drowning in the sea a year or so ago, right? And my daughter looked at me and said, "Oh, Dad, you need to take your bag off and put it on my back." I didn't give a reason why. I could have killed myself. It was instinctual. I just did it.
Well, I was going to say, you've got to break it down into its parts of what the actual activity was that they did. The stones were somewhere else. They brought them to that place.
Even if they moved them.
That was an activity in itself.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
So it's like, you know, Stonehenge, but you know, whatever, any memorial, any building, it's what do they, you know, why would they? Well, they do have, what we should say is they do have the sentience or the consciousness to do that, you know, for their own reason, you know, whatever it is.
So can I put this back at Bill? Is the reason why just to move the stone? And for me, I would agree with Anne. That's the why. That's the reason. They're just moving a stone.
Okay, they wanted to achieve something. It was a project, if you like, to achieve something.
That's it. Right. That's what I feel. Yeah. I'm with that. I'm okay.
That's you know, that's the basis, the basics.
That is the basics, and that'll be fine. Right, we'll take a break now. Let's get on with it.
Right. Okay.
So now we're back at the Bay of Morbian. This is the Morbian stone circle. Now, again, the stones associated with this stone circle are neither one size or another. They're neither really fat or they're neither massively tall or they're this way or that way. They're all over the place. This itself is on an island in the Gulf of Morbian, southeast of Karnak. Now, they didn't build a stone circle in the water, but this stone circle itself, with rising water levels, finds half of it now underwater, but there is actually 2 stone circles there. So this is basically what's going on. So when I looked at this earlier on, it is very awkward to interpret. And what I mean by very awkward to interpret, obviously this here is that stone. And these stones are obviously probably these stones here. And then I thought, well, are these stones actually part of this stone circle? So I got rather confused earlier on, actually. But anyway, the main point is there are actually 2 stone circles. One that you can actually see a half of it at most times, and at really low water, you might be able to make out the other stone circle. But I think as I said, the very interesting thing is this has got a bit of a comparison to do with lots of other stone circle sites around the world that have been lost to the sea. So you can see that stone there is that one there, which is actually recumbent stone, which has actually gone over in some kind of a storm. I think this is a rather interesting landscape because it sort of demonstrates the huge changes that the environment have seen since this wonderful prehistoric period. So again, looking at this site, and you can see little bits of being revealed. This site itself is, even though stones have been lost to erosion, ingression of the sea, it's been relatively left alone because there's no building taking place on this island, and because you can't get to it other than actually water, it's as well preserved as it is. Now, one thing that this springs to mind when I look at it is in regards to stone circles found on the island of Crete. And the stone circles on the island of Crete are inevitably used for something else, for threshing. You've got areas of stones like this, which are quite tightly knit together, like these ones, and they used to thresh in the central area. Now, they're described as stone circles, but naturally the stones are really tight together, and there's lots of stone that there's been used here, and you could probably get quite useful beds to actually quarry the stone from. But naturally, this is going to be granite. Looking at this again, just going to put my glasses on. Looking at this again, you can actually see this really tall stone. Now, that really tall stone is rather interesting because you've got this wonderful stone circle on a little island in this little Gulf of Morbian. And then you've got this, which is the passage grave, which is, as you've mentioned, Henry, very similar to Newgrange, which this is actually on an island as well. This is at Gavrinis. And the carvings inside them are absolutely amazing, which we're going to actually look at in a short while. So we move on again. And what you can see clearly is as the sea is going out, you can actually see where the stone circle is curving around. And I'm actually going back with this being part of the other stone circle, these stones here. That's what it looks like to me. But in many ways, you can see this as a little island here. And if you sort of wander along here, you're getting very close to the surface of a prehistoric surface that our ancient ancestors would have walked upon. And that is, again, the little island of Gavrinis. And Gavrinis has got its own little story associated with it, which we'll talk about in a short while. So back to this wonderful site. Now let's give you a little bit information. Let's get my little notes up there. Gavrinis. Now Gavrinis itself, Gavrinis in the Breton language basically means goat island. And it's classed as a megalithic tomb. It's classed as a dolmen. It's basically one of the finest passage graves in Western Europe. It's on par with Newgrange in Ireland, but in fact the quality of the decorated slabs at this site. There's a lot more of them than as you find with New Grange. So Goat Island, it's in the Breton Goat Island, but some people actually give the word a parallel to being Rath Island. That's another word for what this island could have actually been called, Rath Island. Gaver, which in Siarad Cymraeg means goat, but the word Gaver being mistranslated could actually mean Rath Island as well. That aside, not much of a rath because of the beautiful nature of the carvings inside this passage grave. We do mention another site known as Loch Maracas. And when we look at Loch Maracas, that's basically a homework for next week. This wonderful site of Gav Rinnis was excavated in 1835. And what they did, they excavated from the top of the mound straight bang into the middle, into the chamber in the middle. That's how they excavated in 1835. That's how most people worked with these things. They didn't go in from the side. But we do think that there hasn't been a great deal of disturbance to these large stones. Whatever they found in 1835, human remains or whatever, is not going to be as a complete record as if they say excavated it today, because they would have recorded everything in 1835. Bit of restoration work has taken place, but the carvings themselves are all contemporary in their original positions. They're so much in their original positions that we know there's carvings on the back because there's been glimpses of them, but we don't know precisely what's on the back. And the carvings actually on the backs of the stones, not facing inside the passageway, we're told very different, as was seen a glimpse of them in the 1930s and a glimpse of them in the 1960s. So there's lots of talk of when this was constructed. Was it constructed 4,000 years ago, 3,000, I'll start again, 4,000 years BC, 6,000 years ago, 3,000 years BC, 5,000 years ago? We don't really know. When the site was abandoned, some say it was abandoned maybe after a few 100 years of use, but back then it wouldn't have been on an island, it would have been on a little hillock. It's a 50-meter diameter mound, a mass amount of stones, dry stone mooring to create this wonderful, spectacular monument. And again, this isn't as touched as New Grange, to be honest with you. There's been a lot of restoration at New Grange, but what you basically see mainly here is the roof furniture. There's one slab stone here that's over 17 tons in weight. It's huge. So what they would have done in 1835, they would have excavated from the top, which would have probably left any destruction to the wonderful decorated stones as you actually go in, flanking on each side. So again, close relationship with this wonderful stone circle, which would have probably been later in date than the wonderful chamber that you're looking off in the distance. And look at that, the wonderful marvels. So let's give you a little bit more information. So let's look at the go forward. That's what you see on one side as you go in. All the stones are numbered. And if we give you another little bit of a cross section, hang on, all these. There you go, another little bit of a cross section. 14 meters of beautiful art on either side of you, including on the floor and actually on the ceiling. The stuff on the floor isn't very well preserved because it's been eroded. And if we look at back to that, let's give you a little bit of gem. So the chamber itself, there are 50 slabs altogether, some on the floor, majority of them on the left and the right of the passage as you go in. 14-ton stone as a capstone. This is by far one of the most enigmatic, one of the most intact of these passage tombs anywhere in the world, actually. So the chamber at the end of this passage is only 2.5 meters across, so it's not massively wide. And the chamber is reached again by a 14-meter corridor. There are 29 uprights, so 50 stones there altogether. So the other 21 create the roof, the chamber at the end, and the base. So 21 stones themselves, the author stats, 23 of them are decorated with carved symbols and patterns. amazingly enough. Abstract designs, designs of croziers. I don't know what they're doing down there. All these are sort of symbolic, not intentionally. Conventional and unconventional shapes, stylized human figure, maybe zigzag designs, lozenges, snake-like lines, and so on. Now, one basically theory has it, and we'll go on to that now. If I can get back to that. If you look at these spirals, I don't know if you any of you have ever been involved in tossing, right? So I used to toss quite a lot, and I used to get the right types of stones, and I used to toss them in the water, and I used to create, they used to bounce, and I used to toss really far. And when my stones used to touch, they used to create ripples, and they used to touch, and used to create ripples, touch. And I used to get out of my skims, after I'd tossed, I used to get distances of about 10, 15, 20 meters. Which is world-class standard, apparently. I was going to enter the tossing competition, but I didn't actually eventually get there. But the point with all this is when a stone hits the water, it radiates. So you've got all these ripples. Now, that's not in my description, but this is a new theory by some archaeologists that these represent ripples on water. In other words, an echo, or like a sound wave. And that's like a really good theory, but Bill, that's just a theory, right? It has to be just called just a theory. I've got no real proof for that, and nor is the archaeologist that actually presented this. So what we've got this great landscape, Loch Maracas there, Gavrinis. This is the landscape of, I gotta bloody remind myself of it. This is the landscape of Morbian, the carnac landscape, and again, there you go, that little island. You can just see the stone in the water, the stone circle in the water, and this wonderful mound in front. And we look at, there you go, absolutely wonderful. Now, let's do a little bit more text. So, title, Reuse of Stones. In 1984, it was discovered the external sides of the stone slab, now covered by cairn material, the stuff above, is also decorated, but in a different style from their internal face. This decoration must have been applied before the cairn was erected. Archaeologists suspect that at least a number of those slabs may have been reused or reused again, having formed part of earlier monuments elsewhere. So when Bill and I and Pat went to see the burial chamber at Mice Howe, when we went in there was a long slab on the floor and long basic slabs on the side. And then we thought, oh, that looks a bit like the stones at Stenes. And then the guide said, actually, the stone that you walked on, the stone above you and all the rest of it were probably part of an upright stone circle at one stage. So they've actually been reused. So we've seen Stenes, which is a stone circle in the Ring of Brodgar. And then those sort of broadcast maybe how this site was once. So maybe there's a stone circle there, and that's basically the end result. Most strikingly, the top of the chamber ceiling slab bore the depiction of a bull, the horns of a further animal, and a motif known from other monuments that has often been interpreted as an axe, but which has also been interpreted as representing mythical animals. Actually, we don't blooming know. There's even a suggestion that these waves and symbols represent a whale. And I thought there was a really interesting thing Anne saying earlier on about, these stones would have been moved into position. Well, they would have been. You don't find a load of stones like this lying around with labels on saying, well, that goes there, and we'll put it. No matter what way you look at it, these stones have come from somewhere. Even if it's come from 10 meters away, they've been moved. The really good point of Anne saying that. Now, there is actually a replica of this site because it is on an island. They want to reduce traffic in there. And there's a replica at the Bougon site at Duger-Sèvres. So they've actually done a replica of the Gavrinis chamber, which is great. So you don't actually need definitely to go to the island, which is fine. A bit like virtual reality in the physical. So finally, let's look at these images. So I think it's absolutely great. We're looking at history and it's like a book, it pages, and you can if you, when you're trying to fit a lot into something like this, so what we've got, if we got this there, and we go, we're moving there, and can you see the ripples? So what you can see ripples, and what you get secondary ripples. It's almost as if you got water. You toss. You're into your good old tossing. You toss something into the water, and there's a ripple, and then almost there's a secondary ripple, and that's something what I'm seeing. And Mike said this. There'd been a bit of a theory. Somebody had been working on this sort of ripple theory, which I thought was really useful. Is another way of interpreting this wonderful monument. Oh, sound is holding up. Right, good. Let's try and get to the end of the lecture and have a perfect recording. And again, so anyone obviously wanting, you know, this is a recording. So what we also see with these as well, we actually see little snake-like designs as well. To be honest with you, do they actually need to represent anything? Because let's like go, I'm doodling, yeah, do a bit of doodling, right? Don't actually represent anything, does it? And then archaeologists go on a bit of a tangent and say that it definitely does represent something. So, you know, we can't put on modern ideas and standards on these things, but we can think, well, people in the past were very similar to us. So there you go. There's a little bit of a map as you go.
Oh, you've turned your microphone off, Carl.
Sod it! Somebody's playing silly buggers. I've turned my microphone off. So Pat,
It was just when you started drawing the arrows. That's when you went off.
All right, that's fine. We'll just do that bit again. So you think about it, these two are not, if we go to, it's good to have you there, Pat. So these two ain't got carvings on, but when you think about it, if you go down here, it's like a gallery. It's a brilliant gallery either side. And there's actually carvings on the floor as well. And unbeknown to us, but we do know now that there are carvings on the backs of the stones, and there are carvings on the sides of the stones, actually on the roofs of the stones. Carvings that were not meant to be seen within this passage gallery, this passage chamber. But if these had been erected somewhere else for a short period of time and didn't show any signs of erosion, then you're only able to see one side of it. So in other words, like lots of things in prehistory, there's a change of use, always with that change of use in prehistory. Look at that. So obviously, if you're about 5'4", you'd be able to walk down it. If you're like Michelle, you wouldn't have a problem at all. If you're like me, I would be banging my head. And if you were Clive, remember Clive, Pat, he would have definitely banged his head on this. So again, what you can see is these sense of ripples and the meaning and the interpretation of these ripples. And probably it's good that it's on a little island because not many people actually go out there. And even if they go, they're really restricted because there's carvings on the floor. Again, look at the way this speaks to you, just like an art form. And the other thing as well is two points. Somebody said, well, were these painted? And I said, probably. And then I said, actually, when they came out of the ground or when they were moved, they were a different color because that's what happens with rock. It changed the color of a rock. The patina changes over time. So that's part of the magic. It's a bit like Leonardo da Vinci's works or Monet's. I'm sure that the color has changed, and that's a sense of magicness with these. Doesn't that look wonderful? So you're going all the way to this little 2.5 meter wide chamber at the end. And to be honest with you, I'm looking at that and thinking, I don't feel any malice in there. It doesn't feel threatening. It feels okay. And again, we've looked at that sort of a bit of a section. It's a 30 meter in diameter tomb. And you can see where the idea of human figures comes from. Look at that. This wonderful idea of these human figures. But again, they look like something very different to me. They look a bit like a a labyrinth or a maze, but something seems to have cut into it. So obviously this has all been planned on the stone. So it would have been planned on the stone, because if you made a mistake, then you've probably got to re-chisel over the entire surface. And look at that, carvings on the sides of the stones as well. And there you go. If you spot the one on the floor, I'm just going to see what this message is now. Thumbprint. Thumbprint. Do you know what? I've got a new phone, and I was putting the security in for the phone, and it was reading my fingerprint. Yeah, Dal. Do you know the way it gets sort of? Yeah, I see what you mean. Now, if you look at the floor as well, so obviously we've got carvings on the roof. Look at that there. So at one stage, these would have probably all been together. And somebody said, right, we'll make it into a passage grave. Or we'll make it into something else, and it'll eventually become a passage grave with burials in it. Probably didn't start off with a burial chamber at all. But then again, nor did that chapel down the road that's now a Muslim mosque, or that pub down the road that's now a corner shop. They didn't start, this was never always a passage. This was never always part of a passage grave. It was always something else, and you can clearly see that now. Pure skill in making this. And Bill, they didn't have iron chisels back then. This is in solid granite. The other way, Bill, we'll just have to accept it. Again, looking at that, does look like a bit like a fingerprint. And to be honest with you, you can see your fingerprint. It's, yeah, I'm looking at my fingerprint and thinking, yeah, you've got a good point there, Del. It's just so exquisite. It's, add a bit of color and you're in heaven. You really, really are. It's wonderful. And this is that last site I was going to mention today. And this is a site known as Loch Maracas. This sort of little bit of, it's not too far from our site that we're talking about today. So you've got those four stones there in the forefront, which have been, that would have been one stone, 14 meters high once. And this is that chamber. This is another chamber. And this is a bit like West Kennet Long Barrow, this one. You got a chamber, and you got a long mound, 100 meters plus leading to it, and you got stone curving on the side, originally a mound of earth, and it's sort of eroded away. But then again, they don't all need to necessarily have mounds of earth. But this, again, the whole point of this is at Loch Maracas within a burial landscape. This is your homework. There's no point asking me anymore, because you need to look at that. So Loch Maracas, we just looked at our wonderful site of Gofranes, which is by there. That's that little island with the standing stone. And all the stuff to do with Carnac, and the lines are a bit further north. And look at that, absolutely amazing. That's just come over and collapsed. A wonderful piece of time. And they've actually got carvings in relief, which is raised out of the stone rather than the incised designs before. And you could tell they're in relief because of two things. One, you can see a shadow on one side rather than a shadow in all of it. And that is the name Gazelle carved into it. So that's incised, which is into the rock, incised, and this is relief. These are the types of designs at our site at Loch Maracas. Again, these beautiful stones. It's collapsed. Look, this looks very similar to our one at Gavrilis, but it's not as grand. Probably a bit of a cross between the two sites and Newgrange. As it flows into the distance, sort of this curved alignment for that barrow that we're talking about, and this overview. Just see, oh yes, if you put earth on the top of this, this would look very similar to West Kennet Long Barrow, if there was earth on the top of it, which is probably likely. And that final plan, which is in front of you, and the point of this finally is that it's within a a massive burial landscape, and this is your homework. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to end there. I've got to get tonight prepared, and I'm going to have a snooze after this. So are there any questions from Billis? Let's have you first, Henri.
There we are. I'm unmuted now.
I'll let Bill go.
Go on, Bill.
I never realized there was so much at Karnak. It's an amazing site. It really is. And obviously, by the time all these wonderful structures were erected, people had a strong artistic sense. The previous tomb, if it was a tomb you mentioned, it was almost like an art gallery. Come in, lads, and have a go. This is your stone, then your stone. See what you think.
But the thing is, Bill, on 2 points there, the stones were already carved, right? But come in, guys, have a go and see what you think of what it tells you. Yeah, I'm with that.
Have they used surface phosphorescent technique to try to pinpoint whether these carvings were done at different times of these stones?
Not that I've read anything about, but I think the technology will one day come that they'll be able to read what's on the backs of them, and the designs on the back are very, very different from the designs on the front. So in other words, what we do find with burial chambers across our land is that we see that the carvings are on the internal part of the stone rather than the external part. So the carvings look inwards rather than actually into the tomb. But the other thing as well is, after thousands of years of people going into there, they would have rubbed some of these designs off, but they would have definitely eroded away.
If you went there,
if
you went there, you needed a week to see all this. You really would, wouldn't you? There's so much there.
Yes, you would. You would. And Bill, the guy who owns the B&B in where we stayed in Cornwall has got a house in France, and he said, would you be interested in going over to France and using it for a week?
That's not a bad idea. When are we going?
Yeah, well, it'll just be, I'll just take Kathy, you, Michelle, and the goats. I'll be good.
Thanks, Carl.
And me.
Are you going to go anywhere?
I'd love to go. I'd love to go there. It looks fantastic.
We'll just
go to St. Malo.
St. Malo's Bay, yeah.
Go by boat to St. Malo.
And there's also the nudist beach. There's the nudist
and I used to have a pen friend in St. Brieuc, and I never knew where it was. It was the capital of Brittany.
Ah, right. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
But it's beautiful. Yeah, beautiful carving.
It is. It is beautiful. It is. So, right, Dallas.
Fantastic. Thanks, Carl. I've been there twice. As I said, it's totally atmospheric. We haven't got quite the same year unless we drain the Bristol Channel and we find stuff going down from Kenthic Beach to whatever's across the other side.
Probably.
But lovely. Really good. Thanks.
It is. It is.
Yes, and you can include me on that trip.
Oh my God, this is getting a bit too much. We're only going to go over in a Skoda.
Would you need a boat to get to the islands?
No, those ones, yeah, you would. But I'm sure we could hire a little rowboat. We can imagine it now. Two rowboats going around and around. Yeah, I can see it now. It'll be a little bit
like, would do.
Yeah, Bridget Jones. Yeah, it would. Bridget Jones's Diary. It would be great. It'd be a bit like that. So, what about you, Pat? Anything?
No, that was great. I really enjoyed it. I liked all the pictures, and I'm going to look online and get some more.
Yeah, look at the site of Loch Maracare.
LOCMARIEQU.
La Maricare, yeah. And La Maricare, Henry, what would you like to say, darling? And we'll do that.
I was most impressed. The pictures are excellent. They're really spectacular, and I've had a quick look at some other sites, and they're really worth seeing. And actually, you would encourage even me to go on a trip.
Oh my God, it's all happening. It's all happening. Bill will take his dressing gown as well. So what I'm going to do is I've naturally got to we'll be doing the class tonight, and Henry said, idea, could the builders, hang on, Bill, let's read this, Henry. I know, idea, could the builders have moved around France to Ireland? Well, maybe they could have come from Orkney.
No, it's too far north.
Nah, the Orcadians like doing their bits, you know, they do.
Oh, I can't hear very well.
Anyway,
Pat, Monty isn't going tomorrow either.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought.
No. So
Well,
I think we'd knock it on the head.
No,
tomorrow.
Del and I and his wife are coming. There'll be 3 of us.
what about,
yeah, Del and his wife. Yeah.
what about
Oh,
Dorothy? What about Dorothy?
Not sure. I'll give her a ring.
Yeah,
Yeah,
tell her the 3 of us will be there.
Yeah, that'll be good. And Del will be buying you all a drink and a meal. On that note, next week.
I will.
Yeah, he will. Oh, I'm going as well. We're all going. Henry will be going for a free meal, whatever. So just quickly say, next week we're doing the cattle hire, and we've got the walk next Tuesday at 10 o'clock at St. Quintin's. And we've obviously got the 2 recorded lectures over Christmas that we'll be doing for you guys. And we're at Tinkinswood Burial Chamber tomorrow night and Maricare on Saturday in the evening. And newsletter basically done to go out to get that out to you. And other than that, I'm a bit knackered. I'll see those of you tonight. We've obviously, eventually, Bill will get over crux frame buildings. We were supposed to have got over it 2 weeks ago, but we will do it eventually. We're involving our crux frame buildings, really intense. On that note, if there's nothing else anyone wants to say, right? It's 7 o'clock tonight, by the way. I'm going. So anyway, see you, Pat. See you, Del. Henry.
Bye.
Bill.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Oh my God, it was like a weird goat. Take care. This is KARL-JAMES Langford. Thanks for watching that lecture. A bit knackered now after 2 lectures today, another lecture tonight. If there's anything you would like to say, we've got 2 recordings, the one this morning, might be a bit more information than that as well. Thank you very much. KARL-JAMES Langford. Subscribe, like, and PayPal. Every penny helps. We've got a bit of a project going on at this minute, and you know, there's a lot more videos out of it. Thank you very much. Over and out. This is KARL-JAMES Langford. channel 05 to 1975.